Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the North Shore Drive podcast. We've got Brian Batko on for our Friday episode. We're going to approach the draft and the Steelers' plans a different way. We're going to do a fantasy draft of the best options they could take in the first round. We'll go over that. We'll talk about the players who weren't official top 30 visits you should keep your eye on in the first round. And we'll also be talking about the TJ Watt contract situation all here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello, welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. We're your Steelers reporters. And as always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And as always, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Not only will they help you when you're injured in a car accident, or they will also help you when you need help fighting for your workers' compensation rights. Be sure to call Edgar Snyder Associates at 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Brian, it's time we do another sort of fantasy draft situation of Steelers realistic options. We did one on quarterbacks, and we have several people still in play, believe it or not, for who could be the Steelers starting quarterback next year.
This is my favorite gimmick. It's the favorite way to just talk about something in a different way and get a show under our belts.
It's a gimmick that keeps on giving for sure when we get to this stage of the draft process.
People love drafts, hence the interest in the NFL draft.
Exactly. So this way, what we're going to do is we have our big boards. We are going to go back and forth on who the Steelers' first round pick could be. We're going to do 4 players or 5 players each.
Let's do 5, because then I think that lends itself to like the 9th and 10th picks being a little more interesting, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so we're gonna go back and forth and do our picks here to kind of give you all the options and explore the different places the Steelers could go in the first round. So with that being said, we're gonna do our coin flip that we always do. I have my 1990s McDonald's Greg Lloyd Steelers coin. Greg Lloyd is heads. The Steelers logo is tails. Brian, I give you the honors of calling this in the air.
Tails.
It is tails. So you get your choice of, do you want to go first or do you want to get the second 2 picks?
You know what? I'm gonna
draft.
I'm gonna go next 2.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. All right. So let me fire up my note taker here just so I can keep track of what.
Remember, this is just what we think are most likely to be the Steelers' first round pick, not necessarily what we would do.
Exactly.
We're just trying to be right, just like you and I were both trying to be right on who the first quarterback to take a snap for the Steelers is going to be week 1. And, we threw out some names that seemed wild at the time, but like you said, still very much in play. If you want an update on that, my team had Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Milroe, and Jaxson Dart. And Chris's team had Mason Rudolph. And who else did you have? Oh, Will Howard is still technically an option.
God help us. That's going to be an interesting room to cover next year.
Well, everyone thought you won the draft because you had the first pick and you took Justin Fields, which
same. How times are different, man. Like it's just because we did that was that January or February?
I don't even think it was that long ago. I really don't. I think it was like early March, right before free agency.
Oh boy, that's the times are changing. That certainly is the case there. So we did a top 5. Then let's do this top 5 here. I get first dibs here on who I think it's going to be. I'm gonna go swinging, and I'm gonna take Derrick Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. He was my first round pick for the Steelers in my first 7-round mock draft. Granted, I traded back and got him, but I think Kenneth Grant would be the great pick here. But I think that there's a chance that Kenneth Grant goes before the Steelers pick. I think there's less of a chance that Derrick Harmon goes before the Steelers pick. And if Kenneth Grant goes, they'll jump on Harmon and they'll consider that a win at 21st overall. Or they trade back and they think they can get him later. So, but Derrick Harmon is my first pick here to try to be right, as you say, in doing this. What say you about your first and second picks here?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this. I agree. I would have taken Harmon first off the board too. That just seems like it's going to be the one that makes the most sense because of all the factors you listed there. But I took the next two because I think there's, kind of 9 guys who make them, check the most boxes for the Steelers. And I wanted to make sure I get, I guess, 5 of those 9. Because if you get the first pick, you'll get the last pick. I hope I did that math right. Yeah, I get the next 2, and then we start pinging back and forth 1-to-1. So with my next couple, I'm just going to try to, circle the wagons and, and circle all the defensive tackles with first round grades most likely. So I'll take Kenneth Grant from Michigan and Walter Nolen from Mississippi. And, I guess these first 3 picks really just, our opinion, or at least mine, is that I do think the Steelers still end up going D-line in the first round and not quarterback, but I wouldn't be shocked. I'm just kind of leaning that way as we sit here a week out.
Okay. All right. We're cooking. We're doing some things here. We're doing big things here, Brian. All right. So we got 2 defensive tackles out of the way. What if I told you?
So you get 1 pick, remember.
Oh, I don't get 2.
Yeah.
That's right. Now we go back and forth. That's right.
Yeah.
Dang it. Now that changes my strategy, because now I do want to get some different people up.
That's why I took the second 2.
That was smart.
Going for the depth.
I'm gonna try to take out a target that I know that's on your board. I'm gonna go Nick Emmanwori. Just get him out the way. Because I think that there's actually a shot at that guy being a pick here. But the safety out of South Carolina, extremely athletic. This is my your worst case scenario draft. This is my all the defensive tackles are gone, all the wide receivers are gone, and the top 3 corners are gone. What shall we do? That's what that'll be their option there. So this is my fail-safe pick. Granted, a little early to take him, but I didn't want you to have it.
In my worst case scenario mock that I did for the PG this week, I actually had Emmanwori off the board too.
Never mind.
Yeah. But okay, I'm actually glad you picked him. I was not. I had him on my board, but I had him pretty low. I'll tell you that much. And I love the way this is falling for me to get the Steelers' first round pick correct, other than Harmon, of course. I'm going to take the big 2 at quarterback, Shedeur Sanders and Jaxson Dart. I'm sorry. I'm going to take the big 1 at quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. And see
now I know your strategy,
Jaxson
sir.
Dart. Yes, I'm going to go with Shedeur. So I still like the way this is falling. I think, well, I guess I could go either way on Shedeur and Dart, because I think there's a better chance that Sanders goes higher, and thus a better chance that Dart is there. But I just tend to think the Steelers will like Sanders a little bit more than Dart.
I agree. And here's the thing: they should. He's a significantly better option. I don't think Jaxson Dart's even this good, man. And you know what?
You taking him here, or are you going to leave him for me?
That's the thing, man. I think I'm going to let you have Jaxson Dart, because I just think I personally just think that if they draft Jaxson Dart, oh boy, that there's going to be a lot of problems here. Give me Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle out of Toledo, because I think he's another fail-safe for, you know what? We're just gonna take this one step at a time. We're gonna go get we're gonna go make sure we get our defensive tackle. He tested very well at the combine. His relative athletic score is very high. I could see him as a fail-safe defensive tackle. And again, this might be more of a trade back in the first round, but still a first-round pick there.
Yeah, I was going to say he was not on my board because I was not thinking trade back scenario. So, you're playing 4D chess. Obviously, people will be calling it a reach if the Steelers take a, soon to be 25-year-old D tackle from Toledo. But yes, he's a good player, and he was the last visitor for them down to the South Side a couple days ago. So interesting pick there. And I will go with Jaxson Dart. So I'm getting 2 defensive tackles, which I think we can all sort of agree that's their biggest team need as we sit here today. Mm-hmm. And 2 quarterbacks, which you could argue is their second biggest team need. Actually, you could argue that's their biggest team need or unless Aaron Rodgers actually puts pen to paper. So yeah, I'll go with Dart, which gives me a top 4 here of Walter Nolen, Kenneth Grant, Shedeur, and Jaxson Dart.
Man, this is getting crazy. This is getting fun. We're getting tight here, going through all the options. I got 2 D tackles and a safety. Ooh, So how do I go about this?
Chris, all three of yours have been pre-draft visitors so far, which makes sense because Troy Fautanu, Broderick Jones, Kenny
Hmm.
Pickett. Obviously, they didn't do that Najee Harris's year. I can't remember, and yeah, not Claypool's year either, 2020. So, I mean, there's a strong trend of the Steelers investing a pick in a guy that they get to spend that sort of extended time with at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex.
But it's that particular reason that I think I need to switch it up here, because there's always a chance that they break stride with that. So I'm gonna go with the guy that in my big board, when I looked at your worst case scenario draft list, this was the highest guy left on my big board, and that was Jahdae Barron, cornerback out of Texas. I love Jahdae Barron. I think he's an extremely talented, flexible option in the secondary that people should rush to go get.
He's what, number
But
6 on your board?
yeah, like I have him extremely high, but
On your top
I've seen
100.
yeah in my top 100 big board, I have him at 6th overall because I think he can be that dangerous. I think he tested well enough. He fits all the bills. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see how does that translate, because some people are a little questionable about Will Johnson because of his injury, and so will they want to get Jahdae Barron, or do they believe in Will Johnson? Does Jahdae Barron fall because he's not the big physical type cornerback here? And I know that goes against the Steelers' prototype for what they've wanted, but I really do think that they like that. Mike Tomlin likes those chess pieces, and Jahdae Barron would be a heck of a chess piece for his secondary. Give me him as my 4th pick here.
I'm going to take a chess piece as well to round out my team here. And it's another pre-draft visitor. And I think the Steelers could have a little bit of buyer beware with this guy because, well, a lot of teams will, but specifically the Steelers, they recently took a toolsy kind of tweener type from this same program. But I'm going to go Shemar Stewart from Texas A&M. Believe the Steelers, looking at him as an outside linebacker, if they had to classify him, he's 6'5", 267. But I mean, I think he could play, your 5 technique, 3 technique up front, depending on what sub package you're in. I mean, his RAS, relative athletic score, was just through the roof.
Yeah,
Let's just categorize him broadly as an edge defender.
Yeah.
He's got the traits, and I don't know if he's also one of those polarizing players that you listen to the national draft analysts, and they think he's got as wide a range as anybody in this draft, because he could go top 10 because the team just loves the physical profile, or he could fall to the late 20s because 4.5 sacks in his college career.
He could, and that's the thing where Shemar Stewart could be an interesting option here, man. Oh boy.
So it's your last pick. I'll just tell you, I was also considering Matthew Golden, the Texas wide receiver, and Omarion Hampton, UNC running back, both of whom did visit.
So, yes, on both of those. My only thing with Matthew Golden, the reason I didn't take is I think he's going to go higher than the Steelers. I think that someone's going to take the shot at him, his speed, his explosiveness. Someone's going to really want him. I think the same thing of Omarion Hampton. So this is a very outside the box pick here.
This is why I wanted to do 5 for each, because I figured whoever got that 10th pick was going to have to go a little out of there.
I'm going to go with another top 30 pick here, though. TreVeyon Henderson. Now, some people probably thinking, you're crazy, Chris. There's no way he's a first-round pick. I was just doing a live show with several of my colleagues, the Locked On Podcast Network, who are saying TreVeyon Henderson's going in the first round. And I've heard that not just there, but in other places that he could be a first-round pick. This is another, if everything else is gone, if all the D tackles, all the receivers, all the corners, and, you're the quarterback that you want to go quarterback, what if the position that they have scouted more than any other position with their top 30 visits, what if that position is running back, and what if that player is TreVeyon Henderson, because Omarion Hampton's off the board and Henderson's next on the list, and they want to get that explosive player who's going to be in their backfield?
Yeah, I think the case for Henderson is, if the Steelers do feel really strongly that Aaron Rodgers is going to be here wearing number 8 from Corliss Waitman, and they think their offensive line's ready to roll, DK Metcalf and George Pickens, arguably best receiver duo other than Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in the NFL, then yeah, I mean, maybe they look at Henderson as that finishing piece, and he can be, the rookie light version of sort of what Saquon was doing, ripping off huge runs for the Eagles, if that's what they're trying to build. So, all right. So your 5 were Derrick Harmon,
Mm-hmm.
Darius Alexander, Nick Emmanwori, Jahdae Barron, and Travion Henderson. Mine were Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolen, Shedeur Sanders, Jaxson Dart, Shemar, Stewart. So you got gave yourself a wider range of prospects to choose from, but inherently riskier to kind of bake in those possibilities of trading down for a couple of those guys.
Exactly. That was very intentional because I think a trade back is on the table for the Steelers if things fall a certain way. I think they are significantly more likely to trade back this year than they are to trade up.
Well, I don't think we really snubbed anybody too much. Maybe a Emeka Egbuka or
maybe
Will Johnson from Michigan, but those would maybe be the two or I mean, obviously Golden and Hampton, but like you said, you just think they're going to go higher, which we shall see.
We shall see. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to Brian about those top 30 visits and who outside the top 30 visits could still be on the board for the Steelers. That's next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But first, to remind you, this show is brought to you by Edgar Snyder Associates. Not only do they help you when you're injured in a car accident, but they'll also help you with workers' compensation, because when you've been hurt on the job, you know who decides when you're better. You know who decides when your treatment's over. You know who decides when your benefits are over. The answer should surprise you. It's actually the insurance company's doctors, and they are not on your side. If that makes you feel terrible, you need to call Edgar Snyder Associates today, because at 1-800-94-EDGAR, they've got the team of experts and attorneys. They're going to fight for your workers' compensation rights that you deserve and make sure that you have that protection. And so call Edgar Snyder Associates at 1-800-94-EDGAR. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, the top 30 visits are complete. We know who all the players are. They are in there. But as we do every year, the top 30 visits, and as you said in the last segment, the top 30 visits have been an indicator for the past few years of where the Steelers are going to go. They brought in Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu. Both of them were their first round picks. I think Kenny Pickett was brought in, albeit didn't really count against it because he was a Pitt player. But he was one of those visits. You brought in Najee Harris, couldn't be, but that was a fit there. So it's been the trend in this decade that's been the player there. But there's always the possibility that trend comes to an end for whatever reason. The draft is a very wild and wacky time where insane things happen and teams make big moves all the time. There's always smoke screens up to confuse people. If you were to pick, if there was a player that you were surprised the most about not coming, who do you think is still that guy on the board? And I think it should be an answer that you gave in the last segment as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Walter Nolen is very much up there, the Mississippi defensive tackle, who, I mean, he's another one, depending on whose national mock draft you look at, see him going in the top 15 because of the talent, former number 1 overall recruit in the country. And then some people have him slipping out of the first round. There are some character concerns from the anonymous scout community out there. So that strikes me as the kind of guy that you'd probably want to bring in and get to know a little bit better and vet those things. But we also know he was at the Senior Bowl. Maybe the Mike Tomlin and the Steelers felt really good about chatting with him down in Mobile. Maybe he's the type of guy that they're convicted in, and they want to almost keep it a secret, their interest in him, because that middle round could be where, people start to move up and down the draft board, targeting certain types, much like the Steelers did with Broderick Jones a couple years ago. So that one stands out. But I'll throw a few other defensive tackles at you, Chris. TJ Sanders from South Carolina, Ty Robinson from Nebraska, and Deion Walker from Kentucky. I thought all three of those were players who could help the Steelers and were from places that they don't typically go to the pro days, so maybe don't have quite as much information. But between the Senior Bowl and the Combine, you never know who they're meeting with and chatting with that they feel like, yeah, we don't actually need to fly this guy in. If he's there and we like him, we can still take him.
I think that's certainly what the Steelers could be doing here. I look at the top 30 visits, and they're kind of like guidelines. They're who the Steelers have certainly taken a look at. But this team does so much more. All teams do so much more than just those visits. Those are guys that they want to get in, they want to get a sense of. But I've listened to like when Adam Schefter talks about how when he runs into Mike Tomlin on the road during draft season, you see Mike Tomlin he is reading everything. He's exploring. He's learning about every single aspect of who players are. He wants to know, what kind of, how did they practice? How did they do this? He's trying to, he's calling people. He wants to know all the background, just like that's the same thing that the staff does. That's what everyone's trying to figure out. And so when the Steelers are doing that, there's going to be times where they think they have a beat on a guy because of their own personal connections. And they're like, we don't want to advertise it, that guy is our primary target right now. And, I think that player could be there, but they could also be like, hey, you know what? This guy's so good. We don't care if you know that we're going for him. If he's there, we're going to take him. If he's not, we got some other plans. But certainly I think that's very much on the table here. I also think, and I've been looking over this, I think this might be one of the more mixed, like first round opportunities setups that the Steelers have had, maybe the most mixed that Omar Khan's had since he's been GM. Granted, last year I think they also could have gone in several different directions in the first round, but I thought they were going tackle. They went tackle, and I thought that was very much telegraphed. I think they're going for defensive tackle this year, but I think that because of how the board is set up this year, the opportunities to go in so many different directions don't make it as clear cut as it has been the last 2 years, in my opinion, with Omar Khan. Am I feeding into this too much, Brian? Or do you
at
think
least that's what they want you to think. That
Right.
might be what they want people on the outside to think, and that's a kind of a credit to them that they've made themselves sort of a moving target at quarterback with talking it so much to Shedeur Sanders and Jaxson Dart and even Tyler Shuck. They might feel like, hey, we've made a lot of moves that make it pretty clear we're not going for a first round quarterback, but you could just as well make the case that the Steelers have made a lot of moves that make it seem likely they are going for a first round quarterback. So it's certainly good to keep the other 31 teams guessing because, as much as you're drafting for yourself and honoring your own board, I mean, you're drafting against the rest of the league in a sense as well to get players that you think fit what you do and help your team needs. So, I mean, I ultimately, like we said in the first segment, I still think they're going to make the quote unquote obvious pick of a defensive lineman. Normally, the same needs that you see for the Steelers coming out of a previous season tend to hold up a few months later when you get to the draft. I'd say the biggest reason for that is they're not typically out there spending buku bucks in free agency and, slamming down the hammer for Milton Williams in this particular offseason or throwing a bunch of money at Sam Darnold or somebody like that. So, I mean, that I think is why it tends to kind of stay the same for these few months where everybody knew they were picking a running back for the most part when they went with Najee Harris. That quarterback year, I mean, defensive line had worked its way into that discussion, but man, did they travel the country looking for their future franchise quarterback for better or worse, obviously in the end for worse. So this year you can really make the clear inferences. D-line, running back, and eventually quarterback. And speaking of running back, they brought in about 100 of them on the pre-draft visits. One guy that I really like in this class, and I thought, I'm a little bit worried that he's not going to be a Steeler in some sense because he didn't come, is Damian Martinez in Miami. He is a big dude who runs hard, and I know some people are going to be like, oh, well, he'd just be Najee Harris 2.0. Well, number one, it's different when you get a Najee Harris type in the first round versus the fourth or even third round. And number two, Damian Martinez, I mean, he ripped off some huge runs at Miami and before that at Oregon State. He showed some long speed ability. He had a 75-yarder last year. He had a 64-yarder in 2023. He had a 50-yarder in 2022. So he's not a slug running with the ball.
He's not. I mean, that's the thing. He runs hard. You look at him, you see him like, oh, he's probably like Najee Harris. He probably doesn't have that giddy up to get to a top speed that's going to turn it into a big touchdown. Yeah, I've seen the plays where he's shown the giddy up, and I'm with you. Like he was the one guy that I was like, I thought they would show more interest in him because he fits the bill of what they'd like to do to compare with Jaylen Warren. But hey, something about them Oklahoma State running backs. As far as guys that they've liked. But
Ollie
certainly Ollie Gordon, another guy I think he was a top 30 visit, right? He was top 30. So
Raheem Sanders is another running back I like from South Carolina. I mean, I'm just looking at the bigger bodies in this class that like you said, could be good compliments to that Jalen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell duo. Sanders 6', 217. And he probably plays at a weight heavier than that, but guys want to trim down for the combine.
Absolutely. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, I want to talk to Brian about his perspective on the TJ Watt contract situation and what it's going to take to keep him around with the Pittsburgh Steelers and whether that's worth it. That's next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. But first, remind you the show is also brought to you by UFC Gym. April is Stress Awareness Month, and studies show that doing even one group exercise class a week can significantly reduce stress. So there's no better time to move your body and reset your mind at UFC Gym. However you blow off steam, they've got it. They've got boxing, kickboxing, Zumba, MMA, HIIT, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, muscle makeover, spin, yoga, cardio core, bar classes, youth classes, and silver sneakers. Ready to feel stronger inside and out? Drop in this week at UFC Gym Market Square or the Waterfront to try a class for free at UFC Gym Pittsburgh. We're back here in the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Brian Batko. Brian, Ray and I talked about this a bit on Wednesday, and we went over, he wrote an article. Did the Browns kind of game the Steelers in the way that they signed Myles Garrett, that it forced the Steelers into a tough spot with TJ Watt? But I ask you, Brian, is this a tough spot for the Steelers and TJ Watt outside of, Instagram pictures and, the peace sign and this, that, and the third and the public, speculation of, is TJ Watt upset? Things like that. Is this just a simple matter of Omar Khan and TJ's agents just got to sit down? They'll hammer out a number. It'll probably be just slightly over that $40 million a year mark that Myles Garrett's at. And that number isn't as death ringing as some people make it sound to be because this NFL salary cap has just skyrocketed over the past few years?
Yeah, I think they're ultimately going to get it done. It's going to be kind of like the last TJ Watt negotiation. What was that, 2021, I think, when he got his last deal?
Yes.
Or was it 2020? Either way. 2021, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And, it got down to the nitty gritty and you had the hold in and people wondering, is this actually going to get done? Do we need to worry about this extending into the season? And I feel like back then, and I would probably guess again this year, it's going to just be like a high stakes game of chicken a little bit. TJ Watt moves a little closer to the edge. The Steelers move a little bit closer to the edge. TJ moves closer to the edge. The Steelers move closer to the edge. They're both kind of looking over, and then neither one of them are going to jump. I think they're going to turn around, hug it out, and get it done. But we see with these major deals of the biggest stars in the sport all the time that it can get a little bit contentious or thorny, at least from the outside looking in. Look at the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. I mean, everybody thought the toothpaste was out of the tube on that getting done a couple years ago, and happily married ever since. Or the Rams and Matthew Stafford this year. The Rams were pretty much dangling him over the ledge before they pulled him back, and he said, I'll come back at this number. So this is often how it goes in the NFL. TJ knows that. His reps know that. But what I do think is an interesting layer to all this, Chris, and I don't know if it's legitimate or if it's just kind of another way to like posture and gain some leverage, but I think it was Tom Pelissero who put it out there that TJ's not real happy about the Aaron Rodgers will he or won't he thing with the Steelers. And, if that's delaying him getting some financial security in a way, I wouldn't blame him for feeling like that. We always fans are always like, we want volunteers, not hostages. And then that's almost become such a overused phrase because that doesn't mean you expect Steelers players to play for the team for free or for a hometown discount. That's not what it means. So I would hesitate to, people using that too much, but TJ's got a lot of say in this team. It clearly seems like he wants to be here. Maybe he is frustrated that, hey, I said I clearly want to be here. Why can't we hammer this out versus you sitting here waiting for another guy in a different position that's going to command X amount of dollars? And normally I'd say I don't know if to put stock in that, but Tom Pelissero, I think it was him a couple years ago who reported the non-injury report TJ Watt finger injury from the playoff, the playoff game. It was right around there at some point.
Yeah.
So he's had some occasional nuggets on TJ that have gone beyond, the typical insider, reporting relationship. So that's just one thing I'm keeping an eye on there, sort of the source of, who's putting out that hypothesis about the now infamous TJ Watt Instagram photo.
No, yeah, I think there's certainly some smoke to TJ Watt. I think being frustrated about how the situation's played out with Aaron Rodgers. Why hasn't the deal been done? And look, JJ Watt went on Pat McAfee and was very much like, "Hey, you should probably pay your superstar defensive players before the final year of their contract." And I was like, "Oh, gee, there's not a direct situation in your family that is impacted by such a statement." I think that's certainly part of the play here, but I think at the end of the day, like you said, this is what happens all the time. Players are supposed to look over the ledge because you're supposed to give the team. I mean, look, Cam Hayward was holding in spring practices last year and then came to a practice and was like, hey, it's not like he was like, guys, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. And then he re-signed. Everything was happy. I think this is what you do to give yourself strength at the negotiation table, because if the Steelers if every team knows that you just want to sign them no matter what and that they don't have to pay, they'll lowball you. And you don't want to do that. You're trying to make your money. So this is a natural part of the process. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think TJ Watt's going to end up a Steeler. And here's the other thing about this, Brian. If it is $41 million a year, people are tripping about that number. They say, oh, you can't pay that number. That's ridiculous. No one pays that number for a defensive player. It's about not as big as you think it is anymore, because the salary cap has gone from, I think it was 189 or 180 something, maybe 5 years ago or 4 years ago when TJ Watt signed his first big contract. It is like 279 right now. It is grown by so much. TJ Watt, if he signed for just $41 million a year, that would be just 14.6% of the salary cap. That would be less than the percentage of the salary cap than what he signed for back when he got his first deal. So like, it would be an equivalent to what he's supposed to be paying, what he's been making, just when you consider salary cap size, percentage, and proportions. Now look at the raw number. You think that's $41 million. You can't just do that. It's not. The money and what we understand to be what players are worth is changing. It's why the Chiefs were so smart to lock in Patrick Mahomes, what was it, 5 years or 4 years ago, for a 10-year contract, because now they don't have to worry about every time Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, name a quarterback signs a new big deal and Patrick Mahomes says, my extension got to be like that. No, they got a 10-year deal on that guy. And so that's where I think that this isn't that big a deal, because this is just the going price for what players are. I do think this too. The Steelers should try to get this deal done sooner than Michael Parsons' extension, because I think his will be significantly higher, and that will cause even more questions there. Granted, Michael Parsons younger in his career and a different equation.
Yeah, this is why you always see, like, sort of, we think, ridiculous names as being the highest paid quarterback in the league, because the next guy to get a big deal done always kind of resets the market, and that is the nature of the market. It's constant inflation. The salary cap in the NFL is never going backwards. We know that. So who was it who said, well, they say yesterday's price is not today's price, and
yes,
that is the case.
Tracy Morgan.
What's that?
Tracy Morgan.
Okay, there you go. And that is the case with TJ as well. Now, if you just come at this conversation as TJ's washed or he's about to be washed, then okay, all bets are off. That's a completely different discussion, though, and I don't think you or I quite believe that. So
I think we're on the same page here. Be on the same page with us by checking us out at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, to read all of our written work there. We've got a lot
Chris,
of stuff.
I looked this up in case anybody does want to check my work on the whole like Tom Pelissero has had some insight on TJ Watt. It was a 2023 Ravens game. He reported he had a dislocated finger, tore some ligaments in it, and I don't think it was one of those things that was ever really widely put out there or discussed. So just some food for thought that him suggesting TJ Watt is miffed about the Aaron Rodgers thing is maybe put a little more stock into that than others suggesting that is my point.
Absolutely. He's Brian Batko. I'm Chris Carter. This has been the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Read us at post-gazette.com. Find us here on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes, as well as the daily content that comes out from all of our sports writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, like Chipped Ham and Football that my Brian Batko does every Tuesday. We'll be back here Monday on the North Shore Drive podcast, but stay tuned over the weekend. We've got our special draft videos over the weekend. Brian will be on with Adam Bittner. It's going to be a fun one here. We got all the content getting you ready for the draft. It is now less than a week away. Stay tuned for all of it here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.